No worries. And so you see this part where David says, may these words of my mouth and this meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, Lord, my rock and my redeemer. So we want our thoughts and our what's in our mind and our words of our mouth. We want those to be pleasing to God. So we have these unwanted things. Again, like I said, that quick heat to that face, that drop in the stomach, that tightness, feelings. If we feel stressed, oh, I'm faithless. We feel discouraged, I'm faithless. What do we do with those troubling emotions of anger, of anxiety, of irritation, of fear, of frustration, and of course, sadness? So I want to just propose something. We have used this idea of take every thought captive out of 2 Corinthians 10 as how to deal with emotion. I mean, literally, while I was researching biblically researching what I'm going to show you today about what do we do with our emotions. It was in the middle of COVID. It's 2020. I'm on my porch here in San Diego. And as a therapist, I talk a lot about how to be accepting of your emotions. And that felt really contrary to 2 Corinthians 10, take every thought captive. So I felt like, ooh, I'm feeling uncomfortable with the way I do therapy. Like it feels unbiblical. I need to go and wrestle with 2 Corinthians 10. I believe in that scripture, even what the Bible teaches. I'm going to go get myself surrendered to that scripture. That's literally was my mindset. So I go in to look at it and realize over the first couple of weeks of really digging into it that, oh, wait, that's not even what that scripture is saying. We've been using it to say, with your thoughts and feelings, take them captive, put them, under submission. So actually, what this passage in 2 Corinthians 10, if you look at the larger context of this passage, he's literally talking about his ministry and how there are false teachers that are attacking the truth, attacking his ministry. And he says, take every thought captive. And he's referring to their false teachings. He's not actually referring to what to do with your emotions and what to do with your thoughts, which, if you really rely on this scripture, you keep relying on it that way. I just thought I'd show you, though, that sometimes we have done this, like, oh, take it captive, make it obedient, you faithless person, in ways that actually aren't what the scriptures there are teaching. So then, and I don't know if you know the work of Douglas Jacoby, but then I was like checking with Douglas, am I catching this correctly? And he was like, yep, those take it captive are about the false teachings that are out there by false teachers. I was like, wow. So then that made me go, oh, then what are we supposed to do with our emotions? If we're not supposed to take it captive, then what is the response, God, or how does God want us to deal with our emotions? So that led me on a journey of looking up all of those, because there's all these things that say, do not fear, do not be anxious, do not worry. And they do not, right? And I was like, okay, I want to look at every single one of those. There's about 120 to 140, depending on how you count them and the wording. So I want to look at those a little bit today. So often what happens with the whole take every thought captive is it's an issue of wanting to try to control our thoughts and our emotions. And there's different phrases we'll use, or different ways people have said to me, this is what they're doing with those thoughts or those feelings or those sensations in their body. I just pray till it goes away. So I use prayer to make it go away. Notice the go away part. I just ignore it. You know what? I'm not going to give it power. I'm just going to ignore it. I try to get rid of them. I need to get rid of them. That's close to the take it captive. I cast them out. People will often share about how I try to talk myself down when I'm at a really anxious state. I try to talk myself down. But there's also dangerous statements we can make to ourselves, or you've had somebody say them to you, or if you've said them to others, you know what, sister, brother, we just need to be positive. You need to just move on. Just move on. You should stop dwelling on that. And honestly, if you've got that thought keep popping in your head, popping in your head, popping in your head, and you're like, I'm trying to stop dwelling on it. And someone's saying, or you're telling yourself, you need to stop dwelling on it. You need to have more faith. This is a reflection of your lack of faith. You should be more confident. Like if you're dealing with fear of some kind, you need to be more confident. You need to get past that anger, past that hurt. You just need to forgive. Brother, sister, you're holding a record of wrongs. You need to forgive. You need to take every thought captive. So fill in the blank. We have similar kinds of phrases that go through our head, right? So I decided to take a deep dive, look at all of those passages. I just like this picture. Let's just sit and look at this picture. That's just so pretty. But we're going to talk about this whole set of scriptures that are phrases like, do not fear, do not be anxious. So I found 6 different themes when I looked these up, these 140-ish passages. These are the themes that stood out to me. I'm a researcher, so I literally did what you would call a qualitative study with these scriptures. Like I'm going to look at them and group them and find themes. So part of the research I actually have done and they published it. Like, cool is that? I applied it to some of the scriptures in the Bible. What are some things that we can gain from looking at all of these scriptures together? The top response. So if you put them all together, what's the top response about what God says when he says, do not fear? His top response is, I am with you. I am with you. And that makes sense, right? Just think it. Do not fear. What's the rest of that sentence? For I am with you. There's another big one, what he's going to do. There's another one, who he is. So do not be anxious. And then he tells us something about who he is. Or he says some kind of thing about how I got this. Or he says, let me tell you how I feel about you. Or he says, hey, there's something way bigger out there. So these are the 6 themes. I'm just going to show you 2 of them this morning. Here's a little taste of the I am with you. There's a lot of them, but this gives you a taste. This is the way he says it. The Lord your God goes, do not fear, do not be anxious. The Lord your God goes with you. Do not fear, do not be anxious. Your king is, hey, he's coming, he's coming. Don't worry, he's coming. Your king is coming. Don't worry, don't fear. I'm watching, I'm watching. I've got my eyes on it. Don't fear, I will never leave you or forsake you. He will never leave you or forsake you. Oh, by the way, don't be afraid, because we're going to come and make our home with you. So all of these convey that idea of I'm going to be with you. I'm going to be right there. This is kind of a fun slide. It's only a taste of all. There are 70 on the what he'll do. There are over 70 different actions he says he's going to take. He says, don't fear. I'm going to fight for you. Don't fear. I'm going to rebuild everything. Don't be afraid. Don't be anxious. I'm going to bring you home. I'm not even going to talk about these today. I just thought I'd put this slide up here. But just so you can get an idea of how God, when he says, do not fear, he doesn't go, you need to stop being afraid. Stop it. He doesn't do that. You should take it captive. Put it under control. He says, oh, wait, like a parent would. He says, come here, come here. Don't be afraid. And he puts his arms around us and says, I got you. That's actually what you get from looking at these set of scriptures. So what I'm contending here is God does not respond to our emotions the way we think he does, or maybe the way we've been talking about it. And actually, perhaps when those emotions or thoughts that are uncomfortable come up, maybe they have something they're trying to tell you. Maybe they have some information they need to give you. Maybe they want to chat with you for a little bit, and maybe we should let them chat. You see this reflected in how the scriptures define God's response. This is probably, when it comes to emotion, one of my favorite scriptures in 2 Corinthians 1. Paul calls God here. He gives him two titles. He calls two titles. It's in capitals. He calls him the Father of compassion. And he calls him the God of all comfort. That's his name. Right? So that will give you an indication of how he wants us to deal with our emotions. Just the fact that he entitles himself as the Father of compassion, the God of all comfort. In Isaiah, it's talking about the character of God here. And it says, in all their distress, he too was distressed. So when you're distressed, he is not going, girl, you need to stop. Brother, you need to quit. He's just not doing that. He literally, when you're distressed, he's distressed with you. Like, that's amazing. Look at his heart. He took note of their distress and he heard their cry. So he doesn't have that dismissive response that we have either towards our own emotions or we might have towards each other's emotions. Instead, you hear the desire of the afflicted and listen to their cry, defending the fatherless and the oppressed. He listens, he hears, he knows about whether you're actually fatherless or sometimes you feel that way when you feel so alone. Oppression is a real thing. We've been gratefully talking openly and honestly about it in our churches. Well, I'd say we have begun to speak about it. It's a thing, and God takes it really seriously. He doesn't go, brother, sister, get past it at all. In fact, you actually literally see how God is when you see him with Jesus, see him through Jesus. You literally see what he's like with emotion. He sees a woman crying, and he does say the words, don't cry. So that's similar to do not fear, don't be afraid, right? And you see what prompts his words. It wasn't a, you need to stop crying kind of thing. It literally says his heart went out to her. What it means there in the Greek, it's splagchnizomai. That is such a long word. It means his guts. The word is guts were moved. And we have it in the NIV as his heart went out to her, but it literally means his guts were moved. And you know that when you listen to somebody's story, you hear their story, and you can feel it in your stomach. You go, oh, you just, right? Okay, so this is the very nature of God when we have troubled, distressed emotions. This is him and how he responds to us. Again, these are his titles, right? Compassion, comfort. So we're looking at how God responds to our emotions, but responding to our own emotions, it's important that God has compassion on our emotions. So my question to you would be, do you have compassion on your own emotions? If you get ticked with them and try to kick them out, try to control them, trying to shut them up. Like if you had, some of you might have little children or little grandchildren, or you might help in children's ministry. You might have nephews and nieces. And when they come running in, they're crying, they're upset, they're distressed. Do you go out of the room? You need to shut up, stop. Right? Would you do that? Well, okay, there might be people that do, but they need some help. We do tend towards fixing it, even with those who come with distressed emotion. But in all honesty, most people that I ask this question, they will say, with that small child, I said, what with you when your kids come running up to you, what do you say? When your grandchildren come up, what do you do? And every single person has said, I say, come here. And they get down. Like I've literally had people say, yeah, I get down on their level, or I pull them into my lap and I listen. You know, what are you saying? I'm here. Tell me what's up. You listen, you care, right? So that's how God is about your emotions. Maybe you should treat your own emotions when they run in the room, when they come running, when your emotion walks in to the room with you. Maybe you should respond to it with that same kind of compassion, like you would to that young, distressed child, right? So the title of the class is Acceptance and Mindfulness. So I'm going to step into talking about both of those things. I love the fact that this is actually a stack of rocks. If you were to actually walk into my bedroom right now, I have a whole corner of the room dedicated to all the rocks I collect. And what I'm going to do with them, I'm making a rock garden right now. So I literally, I'll stack them. I love rocks. I'm really enjoying God's creation right now in looking at the little teeny bits of creation in rocks. So anyway, that was a sideline. So how do we do this process that we hear about? What is mindfulness? What is that? Why has this class even got that? We're a bunch of Christians. Why would we have the word mindfulness that surely must be Buddhist in it? So let's talk about that just briefly. That's a whole nother class, but I just want to tap onto it since I'm entitled this class this. So the term mindfulness, when it's applied within Christianity, it's all over different books and podcasts and stuff right now, but it's really about prayer that draws your attention to God, some form of awareness that draws your attention to God, right? That's the focus of it. In Buddhist practice, actually, mindfulness and meditation specifically is about a non-judgmental awareness to transcend attachment to either pleasure or pain. So it's different, right? Mindfulness in Christian circles is going to draw you towards God. Some of the terms that are used in the research is called sacred waiting. So that's a lot like we think of the idea of surrender to God, letting ourselves rest in his hands, in his arms. It's that idea. So I have a doctorate in psychology. I'm a therapist. So that psychologically based idea of mindfulness, the term that's used in the field would be radical acceptance. So that here we're seeing this word acceptance. So we're going to talk about that too. What's really cool is you see it even about how the body responds to emotion in different Psalms and different scriptures. The scriptures literally talk about our trembling, our feet slipping, how we feel shaken versus feeling like our body's resting secure. Zephaniah talks about limp hands, a fearful heart in Isaiah. Panic is the word that's used in Deuteronomy. And David talks about sensations in his heart, like over and over and over and over, different. So we actually see this mindful awareness of the body, this mindful awareness of emotion all throughout the scriptures, right? We haven't called it that maybe, especially not in our fellowship per se. I want to just give you a brief taste of what it is in the field I'm in. Mindfulness and acceptance actually has received a lot of research in the last decade or so. If you've ever heard of cognitive behavioral therapy, it's a cognitive behavior. It's a cognitive approach. CBT is a second wave. DBT and ACT that I'm going to talk about in a minute are called a third wave. So they're kind of like the stepchildren of CBT. And so they use acceptance and mindfulness. What's really cool is within the field I'm in, they've begun really integrating religious adapted mindfulness practices, literally in trainings to do with clients, with those who therapists might see who have a Christian faith, who need coping skills that matches their value system. I love the wording of this. This is from the research, by the way. They're using these approaches to help Christian individuals with coping skills that match their value system. It has been used, acceptance and mindfulness, for trauma, for PTSD, for depression, for suicidal behavior, for eating disorders, for OCD, for anxiety. So it's happening within the very field that I'm in. So this idea of mindfulness is like to handle some of the obstacles that are happening in your mind with a mindful approach. I love, if you look at the picture, here's the guy on the left, he's walking and he's got all these thoughts in his mind. Look at all his thoughts. All right. And this is the worrying thoughts I talked about earlier. And this, and here's the dog. Look at the dog's thoughts. He's like, about where I'm at right now, the trees, the sun. So mindfulness is the idea of how do I get there? Not that we are animals by any means, but how do we get to this just kind of accepting the moment, enjoying the beauty of a moment, right? So the way it would be described is, which I think is important in my field, is non-judgmental, present focused awareness, right? You can see it in the dog, where you're not in a place of worrying about the future or ruminating about the past. So it's being mindful of your internal experiences of your body. I'm going to talk about that, where by giving yourself, by paying attention to how your body's responding, you're giving yourself the space and the awareness to make the choices based on your values rather than being reactive, that I'm feeling scared and so I automatically do this, or I'm feeling angry so I automatically do this, that we slow down enough to be aware of what's happening inside of us so that we can then, I would say, steward our emotions in a way that matches our values. So in order to do this, there's a certain amount of what I would call embodiment, where you're paying attention and then you're embodying, or another word that's used is externalizing, which sounds almost opposite, your emotions. So this is what I did with you earlier when I said, when it's a small child and it runs in the room, when your fear walks in, think of it like that small child running in. How would you treat it? That's actually the process of externalization. So when your anxiety or depression walk in, so this is what I was referring to where they're using it now for mental health. I actually walk my folks through where you give it a color, you give it a texture, like what color is it? It's red, it's dark, it's heavy, it's spiky, it's black, it's on my chest. So they'll describe it so that why? To become more flexible with it. So now I'm going to interact with that embodied feeling that's run in the door so that I can interact with it in a new way and build a new relationship with it. So this is the idea of kind of moving from mindfulness to acceptance. So acceptance is the idea of being willing and open to your whole experience. I'm not going to ignore my body or how I feel. In fact, I'm going to embrace it. I'm not going to reject this part of myself, this anxious part. I'm not going to put it in a cell and take it captive. I'm going to say, hey, anxious part of me, come here. And then you might go, let's go take a walk with God. I call, it's learning to live with it differently and how to take it to God rather than some of the other ways we do that reject how we're feeling. So this is you can actually buy a book called, it's called Get Out of Your Head and Into Your Life. The ACT approach, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy is what it's called. It's a theoretical approach. It's not Christian. So that book that I just referred to isn't Christian, but it kind of gives you a flavor for just different ways to interact with our thoughts and our emotions, where you're accepting them rather than avoiding them or rejecting them. You're accepting them. In fact, you're embracing them. I literally tell my clients, give them a hug. Oh, there it is. That when it comes in, when fear comes in, to go, hey, this is the compassion response, the self-compassion. That's understandable because that was really hard, what I went through last year. So the fact that I would feel fearful, that was really hard, what I went through growing up. So it makes sense that this would make me anxious. It does. It's understandable. I see you, fear. I see you, anxiety. I get why you're here. I really do. So that's the Now, this is where acceptance and mindfulness kind of cross paths, or you're open to the experience. And then you notice it. Ah, fear just walked in. Hello, fear. I get why you're here. And then everybody do this with me. Take a breath in your nose and out your mouth. In your nose and out your mouth. When you feel that troubled emotion come in, literally notice it. Say hi, take a breath. Breathe through the experience. You're not using the breath to get rid of the emotion. You're just letting that breath kind of swirl around it so that you can sit there with it. When you're in that non-reactive place, non-judgmental place, then you have a better opportunity to tap into, who do I want to be in this moment? Where you can tap into your values and your beliefs about God, about the word, about Jesus. So this is the committed part. So the word commitment and acceptance commitment therapy is committed action based on your values. We're just tapping into that idea. People usually ask me, how do we do the values work? You clarify it first. So you can actually go online and look up values clarification and go do one of the projects, one of the processes. I do this with my clients, where you're honestly figuring out what your beliefs are, and people will tell me about their spiritual beliefs, but also their beliefs about how they want to be a wife and a husband, what their beliefs are about being a friend, what their beliefs are about being an employee, what their beliefs are about how they handle their finances. So I will explore values with people, and so that they can then, after they've been mindful and taken a breath, decide the direction and the path about who they want to be. So values are different than goals. Goals, are like, can often be I did it, I reached it, I can check it off. But values are not something you achieve. There's something they're your flight path. It's not, I live in California. It's flying west, not landing in Hawaii. I want to fly west. So it's the direction I desire to go to in my life. That's what values are. And so just a final taste on this part about how it looks like when I'm actually working with people who just therapeutically in my office. I teach relaxation techniques, like even just a simple one. I teach breathing all the time. I teach grounding exercises, which help people be more aware of their five senses: smell, sounds, colors around them, the clothing on their skin. That non-judgmental noticing. I use metaphors when I'm explaining it, that when you have a troubled thought, picture it as a leaf that falls on the stream and you're just watching it go down the stream. You're not jumping in trying to pull the leaf out of the stream. You're just watching the leaf go down the stream. Or I talk about it like, if you've ever played chess, all the pieces are on the board, right? And they're battling each other and getting thrown off. But if you're the chessboard, what's your job? You're just watching the pieces. You're not jumping up on the board trying to get the pieces to move around. You're just observing the pieces. So this is the idea of noticing. It's the biggest area I usually start on, is how to first notice. People will use things like meditation and yoga. They'll use art therapy. Walking is huge. Journaling is huge. I am a great believer in singing. Byron Parsons just taught a lesson recently on meditation, and he talked about one of the steps in his process of meditation is sing it. Oh, it was such a great class. I'm going to give you the link on how to go watch his class. What to do when you have those troubled emotions, because it's like to really say, this is hard. When that fear comes in, that anxiety comes in, having that compassionate response, saying to yourself, this is hard. This is hard. This is hard. So it's understandable. These are coming in. I would say, because it's so hard, learning how to do practices of rest with God, solitude with God. I practice Sabbath every week. I actually did that yesterday, was my Sabbath rest. I'm going to suggest some tools for that. Go get The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, that book. Start learn about lament. Jeannie Shaw just did a whole lesson on lament last week for a webinar that I'm going to show you where to watch that. Really looking at who God is. This is the thing. Remember, he says, I am with you. We need to know who it is that's saying that. Because if we understand who he is and how he feels about us, what's his character like, it grounds all of it deeply. I just think this is a funny quote. After all, the best thing one can do when it's raining is to just let it rain, because actually you can't do anything about it anyway. So you just let it rain and maybe even enjoy it, appreciate it. So instead, choose instead to spend time with anxiety, to sit with pain, to rest in sadness, to embrace fear, to relax into uncertainty, to validate discouragement, to have a new relationship with these uncomfortable feelings. And then maybe go have a chat with God about them, right? So I just wanted to end with some practicals. How do we do this? And then we're going to practice a couple of them just briefly so that we have a time for question and answer, because I'm already a minute past my time. I have done this practice in my own walk with God of picturing myself with Jesus, like literally visualizing myself with him, where he puts he literally does this with people. He puts their hand on their head when they're afraid at the transfiguration. It literally says he put his hand on his head. It says it in Revelation as well. Puts their hand on their head. So I have sat and pictured Jesus putting his hand on my head. John leans against him at the dinner. So I have literally, in time with God, closed my eyes and leaned next onto him. Sitting his feet, picturing myself like Mary sitting at his feet, feeling his mercy washing over me. Because he says she's chosen what's better, right? He's so merciful. The girl that dies, what's the first thing she saw when Jesus literally raised her from the dead? He's holding her hand, it says. So when I wake up troubled in the morning, you might have those kind of mornings, I will literally reach out my hand and I'll take his hand, and as I'm laying there. Jesus walked with his disciples and he sang with them. They sang, it says that. So I'll go on walks with him. I'll walk up the hill with him. Literally. I get distracted and then I have to say, sorry, I'm ignoring you. He sat with his disciples and told them about how he was going to die. So I've sat with him and had that conversation with him, which is a really weird idea. It just was, that was life-changing, actually. Before he ascended, he blessed them. I have pictured myself as the disciples standing there, and I'm being blessed by him before he ascends. I've watched him go while they're singing songs of praise. So this is one new practice that's been, honestly, what I'm sharing with you right now has literally been life-changing for me, is picturing myself with Jesus. So I want to do something about us and God. So for just a minute, sit here with me. And I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to hear the phrase, do not fear, I am with you. And then let that phrase, I am with you, just focus on only those words for the next minute. And take a breath in your nose and out your mouth as you do it. And just hear him say, I am with you. See him looking at you, and his words are, I am with you. Hear him say, do not fear, I am with you. As he says it to you, picture the smile on his face when he says, I am with you. Now take a low breath in your nose and out your mouth. You can open your eyes. It's Women's Month, and I'm teaching this morning for my own region. And I'm doing an exercise that we won't do this morning, but I'm gonna do there are about 15 phrases that Jesus says directly to women. And we're gonna picture hearing him say those phrases to us as a part of our meditation this morning. Go do that. Go look them up. What are the direct phrases he says? Just hearing this one, I am with you. You can go ahead, share in the chat. What was it like for you? If you feel, you don't have to, but if you feel like it, share in the chat what it was like for you to hear him say, to just sit with that phrase. Don't go past it. Don't move. Just stay there. What was it like for you to, restful, right? Calming. Yeah. To just hear him say it. Yeah. Feeling safe. Feeling safe. Sometimes for me, I get emotional when I do this. I read my own chapter in the book. I just practicing, I am with you. We aren't going to do this today, but I wanted to put it in here. Think of a troubling situation and name the emotion. Acknowledge the sentences that are going through your head about it. Let yourself notice the emotions, how they're coming out in your body. And just let those emotions, those thoughts be like a leaf on the stream. You be the chessboard. So I want to encourage you, go think about a distressing situation that you might have and use this slide. I just realized I didn't send Otomo these slides to you. So you can take a picture of the slide right now, but I'm going to actually send all the slides to Otomo and he can share them all with you. Yeah, thank you. It feels vulnerable to do that. I am with you practice. Just some practical tools. You can go on to your apps, your app store and buy the Centering Prayer app. It's a really easy way to start doing this kind of work. I actually did it as I started my Bible time yesterday. You can do the Lectio Divina process. Jim Long and his wife, they're teaching on it with Robert Carrillo's stuff that I'm going to show you in a minute. And but you can also get an app, Lectio Divina Journal is what it's called. Go on a solitude retreat. I'm going to show you how. Start practicing Sabbath. These are just new rhythms you may need where you're daily learning some contemplation meditation practices. So the new rhythms in your life, weekly, quarterly. I'm going to Yosemite. It's 6 hours from me for 4 days in April. Just me and God, just to really be okay. I am in California. I have learned to take advantage of the place I live. So wherever you live, where's the gorgeous stuff? It might have to get warmer first for you. So here's some of the resources. The Inside Out conference is coming up in August. If you haven't heard of it, it's a Christian counseling conference. It's our 6th year. It's hybrid. We're going to be live in Boston this year. Yay. But we're also going to be online. Go to Robert Carrillo's spiritual formation webinars. Here's the link to the classes we did last week. You can still listen to them. You can become a member to listen to them after this week. Go get the book, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And you mentioned it, Otomo. These are my books that are coming up. I'm still writing them. One's called Fear Not, What to Do with Our Emotions. This is one taste of it today. The other is called The Body, A Biblical Perspective. These are my other books on sexuality and addiction. And so here's some of the resources I mentioned. Oh, I doubled up here. Ruthless Elimination, getting the book, Ruth Haley Barton's Invitation to Silence. Here's the Alaska retreat link. So I'm leading a solitude retreat twice in Alaska in May and September this year. Do use Tracy Jones. She's a disciple in Boston. Use her scripture meditations. They're on YouTube. They're amazing. So there we go. So we have a little bit of time. We don't have the 20 minutes. We have 10 minutes for questions. So I want to open it up for any questions.
Before we do any questions, I did want to let everyone know, I think I had announced this, that we're at our 1-year anniversary. And so Gwen, if you're on, I think you had someone you wanted to recognize that we're going to get some swag, some few gifts to for participating in our classes over the year. So you want to share briefly?
Yes, I don't know if he's on today. I'm not sure.
Yes, he is.
Oh, Jorge. Congratulations, Jorge. You've been selected.
So yeah, we will get some time, Jorge, and we have either a sweatshirt and or a little what they called phone thing on the back of the phone that allows you to kind of tilt your phone and stand it up, this kind of a thing. So anyway, we'll talk and get you some great things for your participation. So again, we're 1 year. We wanted to just go ahead and open it up right now for those who might want to ask questions or just comment on the time that we had together that Dr. Konzen guided us through today. And I'll go ahead and stop the recording.